Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, have you ever been to a Merschman Seeds Field Day? We chat about where we've traveled this week across the Midwest and how crops are looking from Nebraska to Illinois. Wheat calls are amping up. Don't miss an opportunity to buy ultra-early wheat and improve your double crop experience. Joe and Ben talk about how our Starting Line Plus seed treatment with Saltro and Trunemco can help protect your yield.
Hi, this is Joe. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Ben, Lynn, and Turk, and I know, Lynn, we're going to let you lead today.
Yeah, so this week was a busy week as far as getting out to the countryside and looking at products and looking at some fields of both corn and beans, and then visiting with some customers that we have out in the countryside from Missouri to Illinois. You guys went out to Nebraska, and we've had a really good opportunity to look at, I would say, nearly the whole portfolio from a corn and bean standpoint and see how things are working in different environments. As we we're pretty spoiled, I would say, in our travels to live right here. We're going to be the garden spot, and we've mentioned that before. But as we got into more closer to Springfield, Illinois, there is some stuff going on in the fields with combines. They're taking off 28-32% corn and taking advantage of some early markets. The buzz is definitely in full bloom down there as far as harvest getting ready to roll. And selfishly as a hobby farmer myself, it gets you really amped up to get going and seeing what the fruit of the labor is. So some things that stood out to me. There is some mid group threes that are starting to kind of senesce off a little bit. We're starting to see the beginning stages of that. One product that looked just really, really good was the McKinley's. I'm very impressed with how that has looked in a variety of different environments. We took a look at some Apaches in eastern Illinois that looks to be a product that I would have no qualms putting almost anywhere. We're seeing it shine as an early option for those folks, and then we get a little further north, and as a fuller season, it just seems to be a really good fit for almost any yield environment, and seems to be adapting really well to a lot of the stresses that they had. In that particular place, they had 6 to 9 inch rate event, and there were some issues out in the field. There was some late season Phytophthora and some different varieties, but this one looked to be holding on pretty strong in that particular field. And I would say fence line to fence line, road to back fence line, the whole field just looked really phenomenal. So it's really, really hard for me to not get super excited about everything that's going on. I would say, and the vast majority of folks too have really realistic expectations of what the year is going to be like. We're going to have really good corn, really good beans, and we're going to have some fields that are going to leave some stuff left to be desired. But it's always nice when you're talking to those folks that the expectations in the right spot, and we tend to be more surprised when we have that going into the harvest. So.
Yep, some variability will be present this year, and particularly depend upon what type of extreme event you had on your farm.
Correct.
Whether it be drought or flood or both.
Yes.
And wind.
And wind, yeah.
Yeah. Coming back with Nolan, I was able to take a look there of Hancock County, where they had the derecho back. They've been back in May, June.
Probably late May.
Losing track of time a little bit, and it's really amazing how the corn crop came back. It's standing up. Corn is definitely shorter because they took some feed off of it with the gooseneck. But when you have that emotional event, the world's coming to an end. Right now, is logistics on harvest going to be maybe a little bit inhibited? Yes. Is it going to be exactly what they want from a yield perspective? No. But I think they have a very good, a very decent corn crop that's going to come off of there, given the circumstances that they had coming to them. So, and those guys, wet early, wind early, flash drought in June, a little bit wet now, probably going to go back to a flash drought here in the next week. So my hat's off to them for staying sane and weathering the storm. But that's the beauty of farming, that we just have to deal with the adverse weather conditions and hope to be well versed financially and agronomically to weather all that. So that is a brief synopsis, or a long synopsis, of what we did for this week. And the last point I guess I want to make from my perspective is wheat calls have really started to amp up. The ultra earlies have really caught attention. Particularly this week, I've gotten 2 phone calls from folks in northern Illinois that want to take that double crop basically right to the Wisconsin border. So we're looking at some pretty exciting stuff from that perspective, as far as moving our goal of moving that double crop further and further north. And the word's out. Merschman yields really well in that ultra early and gives a really good flexibility as far as getting that double crop in.
Yeah, supplies are dwindling fast, so if you need the ultra earlies, you better see your dealer or get them on order. So,
when you were over in Illinois, when you were looking at the Apaches and the McKinleys, where were you at when you were looking at that?
Yeah, we were in north central Illinois.
So I wanted to tie some things together from some of the things that I've seen this week. When we were out walking fields, whether it be the Apache, the McKinley, the Jeffersons, which are not in the book for this year, and even the competitors' beans, would you agree that the throughput line is that every field has a light scattering of sudden death?
Every field.
Yep.
I mean, it is. You can't drive a quarter mile or go to the next section without seeing. The only way that you're not seeing it is because there's a cornfield there.
Right. So, I mean, we spent a lot of time traveling. I mean, kind of going different directions this week too, and it's prevalent, and it's really going to be one of those years where guys are going to have to make some tough decisions on. They may have never planted an Olivo treated bean or a Saltro treated bean or a starting line plus treated bean, and I think that they're going to really take a hard look at that this year. And I know we've talked about it continuously, but like Northwest Missouri was pretty bad. Central Illinois was pretty bad from a scattering standpoint. I mean, it's everywhere. I don't think it's huge yield losses when we're looking at it because it came in as late as it
Correct.
did. We were in the second week of August by the time we got the heavy hitting phone calls. But it's very, very important because as we push our planting dates earlier, we're definitely going to be looking for excellent seed treatments and very good variety scores for moving forward.
Yeah.
So it's very widespread.
And you're talking protection wise. I mean, 2 bushel loss and you've basically, or 2 bushel gain, you've justified the existence of having that either a Olivo or Saltro, whatever the particular product you want. It doesn't take much from a return standpoint, and honestly, that is potentially you won't even see it in the combine.
Right.
If that is truly the case, but you're definitely going to see it this year if you don't have that protection.
let me add to that. The starting line plus with Trunemco and Saltro, we're seeing some separation out there. And we're talking to the astute, they really got the farmers and the dealers that are really on top of their A game, and they're saying they expect their sales of starting line plus to be a majority of their sales this year because of these issues that you're bringing up. So if you are seeing that in your field, you need to make sure you're using starting line plus because that means it's on your farm. It doesn't get less, it gets worse. So you got to be ahead of it. And we had one sales rep in Missouri down by Trenton, and he's got fields where he's seeing the difference between starting line and starting line plus. I mean, it is hugely different on the sudden death. And we think nematodes are coming into play too. So that's my 2 cents to get out ahead of the problem.
Correct.
Talking to that dealer in Illinois, the supplier that he works with in particular, they are very focused on looking at cyst counts for the upcoming year as part of their whole soil package, I guess you'd say, the soil health, that they feel like that has been a really big loss of yield that nobody's paying attention to. So, in describing what we have going on with the starting line plus, we're offering those protections to all of our growers, potentially before that has even become hip or mainstream. So we feel really excited about that. And we know in conversations that most guys haven't looked at that. Now they're paying attention, and what they're finding is their cyst levels exceed far higher than what they originally thought, especially on that central Illinois region.
Well, Ben, with the work that we did last year with Pattern Ag, you got the synopsis all over, and you should summarize what are the two major pests that are showing up more and more. It's nematodes and sudden death, right?
Yep. I mean, the ones that have the highest pressure, which in their stoplight it's a green, yellow, red, the ones that are most consistently in the red that are damaging to yield potential is Pythium, sudden death, and soybean cyst nematode.
And what did you focus on with Starting Line and Starting Line Plus?
Sudden death, soybean cyst nematode, and we have multiple effective fungicides against Pythium and rhizog.
So it's just another key point when you're buying Merschman soybeans with Starting Line or Starting Line Plus is that we are changing our seed treatment to stay ahead of the problems that we're observing, and then the fact that we use some science with Pattern Ag, and you got the synopsis and you saw the trends out there in the field. It's in the soil, we know it, and consequently we're trying to stay ahead because it always affects your best ground, those diseases. So, and of course nematodes maybe so more on the lighter soils, but bottom line is when you buy Merschman soybeans, we're taking this all into account, and that's another plus why you want to stay on our side of the fence.
Right, and I think the last bit on sudden death before this horse is bloodily beat to death is that we pick the best products from a genetic standpoint too. There's some companies out there that bang their chest and say, well, all of our products are exclusive or something to that extent, and we don't necessarily care because we're offering the best product when it comes to a rating on sudden death or a yield standpoint, because when we have 50 different testing sites for 3-3 maturity, more likely than not, out of those 50 spots, there's probably sudden death in one of those, or there's Phytophthora in one of those, or there's pick any disease that you want, and we pick the best product, we pick the best treatment, and I think that's so key because I'm seeing in the companies that bang their chest and yell that we are an exclusive, we have our own beans, those are the ones right now that are, you can see it from side of the road to side of the road. If they're both treated with Saltro, we're holding up against the sudden death better at this point right now. So I'm very, very proud of our lineup. I think we have the best of the best when we're looking at all around best product. If
we had a debate, we clearly win it, because if we had all those other companies around here and we start talking about what we have and what they have, they would have to retreat. They don't have what we have, and we're uniquely different because we're independent. We have 6 different components in our seed treatment. Ask that about your seed treatment supplier. How many different companies make up your seed treatment? Because we take the best of the best. And I agree with you, Ben. You've done an outstanding job of putting this out front.
The other thing that I kind of wanted to talk about that holds into that same account is the white mold. And this is another horse that we've beaten pretty hard the past couple of weeks, but we have seen white mold move very, very, very far south. There's speckling of it in northwest Missouri. There's speckling of it in southern Iowa. There's speckling of it in central Illinois. And our products right now are holding their own very, very well. We may have a plant or two here or there that may have white mold, but when you look at the competition, you look at their seed treatment choice that they're using, it's one of those things that we put standard on ours, that the heads up is doing its job, and we've been getting phone calls from customers saying, man, I'm seeing white mold. And I said, is it in any of our beans? Like a dealership that may provide a couple different brands. And they're like, no, it's not in your beans, but I just wanted to make sure. I'm taking pictures, and they're sending stuff to me that, is this white mold? I'm like, yeah, that's white mold. So it's another one that we fight. So. And the last one that I wanted to talk about in Nebraska was I was just unbelievably surprised by the western bean cutworm. So we had Joe Berkey, who is our sales manager out in Strang, Nebraska, had some fields that didn't have insecticide sprayed on them for certain reasons, and fields that did have insecticide sprayed on them for certain reasons. And the western bean cutworm, it's a pest that we don't necessarily deal with day in and out over here, but I was just mind blown how bad that pest can be. So the insecticides are something that if that is a pest that you deal with year in and year out, doing the sticky traps, doing the moth counts, doing all of that stuff is extremely important right prior to tassel and right after tassel, because sometimes the insecticide that you throw in with your fungicide at tassel time isn't enough. Sometimes a second application is needed. So, and I got some pictures we can throw up for what that insect kind of damage it does.
So you guys flew out there, I guess, from a 2,000, 3,000 foot view, what does the crop look like as we get over top of it? Could you see ponding issues, sulfur deficiencies from the air? Like what? I guess that it's always nice to look at it on the road, and it always seems like the road fools us into what the actual field condition is.
It was pretty cloudy on the way over, so we basically just got the ascent and descent view from the air. So as we're descending into Fairmont, Nebraska, in the great words of Rich Jansen, we've had to train the house cats no-till because it's that dry out there. So there's definitely a lot of burnt up spots out in that neck of the woods. So sorry. Yeah, no, I laughed too when Rich told me that. So they had to train the house cats how to no-till. So
it's because it's so dry.
Right. But yeah, there's some burnt up spots out there. They struggled to keep ahead with irrigation. The farmers did everything in their power to keep up, but the dry land's going to be pretty rough. I think 100 to 125 bushels is going to catch most of the dry land. The irrigated, it's going to be a lot better than that, but that was pretty rough. As we get up in the air here locally, you could probably cover the southeast quadrant of Iowa from what we could see. There's pockets out there that you can start to pick out the less productive soil types, and in those less productive soil types, there looks like there's spots that have burned up faster than what they were supposed to on both soybeans and corn.
Yeah, as these soybeans start to turn, it is a good time to get up in the air, either with a drone or go down and find a local pilot and give them a couple $100 to take you up around your farm, because you will set your yield expectations. Because when we have done that, we have so many farmers say, "Oh, I knew I had a little bit of a planter problem. I didn't know it was that bad." And I know your yield maps and everything can tell you things, but you can set your expectations. You can see where the mistakes were. You can see where the water problems are, and just a little up in the air around your farm it can really help you understand what your limiting factors are, and you can do that probably in less than 30 minutes, with an airplane.
Yeah, no, it's always fun to get up in the air and see what's actually out there, for sure. Turk, we were talking about some new regulation before we started.
Yeah, we had some new regulations from EPA this week. That was actually the final rule on what the U.S. Supreme Court came down with their ruling, and they had to adjust it. And so they removed the words "significant nexus" from their previous ruling.
And this is on which
waters of the U.S.
Waters of the U.S.
WOTUS. And so it helped, but there's still some controversy over interstate waterways because they neglected to put the same terminology into the interstate waterways. So what it amounts to is I look for some more lawsuits to be filed, because there's going to be somebody in some USDA office or some state regulation that are going to say, no, we do have control over this and we don't. And so it's going to get sorted out, because Sackett versus EPA was clearly defining, and that's where the ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court came from to start with. And I think it's assumed that it transfers to interstate waterways, but it didn't say that specifically, and so that's going to be the next lawsuit that's going to have to define it clearly. Also had an opportunity this week to get up to Butler County Ag Bash at Allison, and the word up there is everybody's praying for rain, and the drought monitor this week clearly showed that northeast Iowa was definitely getting worse on rain, and so they're definitely going to have some reduced yields on both corn and soybeans in northeast Iowa.
Like we said, variability is going to be the standard word this year when it comes to how are your yields. So going to see some good ones, and we're going to see some ones that we wish were better.
A lot of corn's coming out of the field right now up there last weekend.
Yep, it's going to be, everybody's going to be ready to rock and roll here very, very shortly, because I think when we were at Rodney's field day, there was some guys harvesting some 28 to 30% moisture corn, and
that was down by Trenton, Missouri. So
yep. And they were talking 140 bushel field averages when they were cutting stuff off. So the good areas were making 200, the poor areas were making 100. So right in that 140 to 150 range. So you're going to see it all over the place.
Well, I'll see if I can brighten the day a little bit. You know, when school starts, it seems like we always get a little outbreak of little sickness and different things, you know, because we're all kind of congregating together. So I thought I'd do one on medicine today, you know. A bucket was feeling ill and decided to go to a physician. Since the bucket was a new patient, the doctor said, "Tell me about yourself first." "Well, I can hold about a half a gallon of liquid. I'm 3 years old, and I have to tell you, I feel pretty under the weather." The doctor replied, "I can tell. You seem to be a little pale."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Why am I the only one laughing? Anyhow, thank you for watching today or listening if you're doing it by podcast. We sincerely appreciate your business. We hope that your family is safe and healthy, and we'll see you next week.